In a quiet countryside town, a peaceful farmer and his proud bull lived in harmony, until the HOA president decided to pick a fight with his horn. What started as petty complaints turned into a clash of pride, steel, and muscle on a dusty rural road. When the bull finally charged, it wasn't just a truck that ended up in the ditch, it was a man's ego. This is a true-to-life tale of boundaries pushed, nature provoked, and the silence that speaks louder than noise. Out past the county road, where the blacktop buckled under summer heat and the wildflowers dared to bloom right up to the gravel, there sat a modest farm with a rust-colored barn, a wind-worn fence, and the kind of quiet that city folk spend fortunes trying to find. The farm belonged to a man named Eli Harwood, a wiry, soft-spoken fellow in his late 50s with weathered hands and the kind of patience you only earn through years of living with animals and burying pride. Eli didn't own much. A patch of land, a peeling red pickup, a dog named Sally, and one bull, but not just any bull. Bruno was thick-necked, dark-coated, and calm in a way that made you second-guess whether he even knew he was a bull at all. Except he did. Oh, he knew. And he carried it like a king who didn't need to raise his voice to rule. Bruno wasn't raised for rodeos or beef. Eli called him family. They had history, the kind that bound tighter than any rope. Bruno had been a scrawny, nearly stillborn calf when Eli found him in the barn one ice-bitten February morning. Eli had slept beside him that first week, wrapping the calf in old blankets, whispering promises neither of them understood, but both seemed to keep. So, when the HOA formed 3 years ago, a committee of overzealous suburban transplants who built a neighborhood next to Eli's farmland and called it Whispering Trails. Eli tried to be polite. He really did, but there was one man who seemed determined to make life anything but quiet. Raymond Finch. OA President. Retired insurance. Executive. Shiny white SUV, pressed khakis on a Saturday, and the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. From the day the Whispering Trails welcome sign went up, Finch had made it his mission to modernize the area, which mostly meant making sure everything looked like a golf course brochure, and that included what lay just outside the HOA's actual jurisdiction. Finch hated Bruno. He said the bull was a liability, that he was too large, too close to the road, too rural. "It's not personal," Finch had said at one of their many tense run-ins. "It's about safety and standards." But Eli had seen the way Finch eyed Bruno, like a challenge, like something too wild to tame. The first complaint had been about the odor, then the fence height, then the sound of hooves in the dirt. Each time, a letter arrived, stiff language and HOA letterhead. Eli never wrote back. He believed in handshakes and eye contact, but Finch played by different rules. Rules written in bylaws and subclauses. Neighbors mostly stayed out of it. Some liked the old farmer and admired Bruno from a distance, while others whispered about property values and dangerous livestock over white wine and lawn chairs. Still, life went on. Eli rose with the sun, worked with his hands, and talked to Bruno like he was a brother. Bruno would stand at the edge of the pasture most afternoons, watching cars crawl by on the country road like he was the sentinel of a vanishing world. He didn't flinch, didn't charge, just stared with a calm that unnerved the HOA president more than any snort or stomp ever could. But as weeks wore on, and the spring gave way to a blistering summer, the tension tightened. Quiet, but coiling. Finch's drives by the pasture became more frequent. The honks started, short, sharp blasts as he passed by, always just close enough to Bruno to make a point. Eli noticed, and so did Bruno. The bull didn't bow. He never had, and something in the wind that June told Eli he might not stay still forever. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Alright, let's keep going. By mid-June, the cicadas were screaming louder than the arguments on next door, and Finch's SUV had become a fixture on the road running. Past Eli's pasture, a white blur that kicked up dust and tension in equal parts. Most mornings, Eli found himself sipping coffee on the porch just as the president of Whispering Trails zoomed by, hand drumming on the steering wheel, eyes laser-focused on the bull standing as still as a statue under the old oak tree. Bruno had started standing closer to the fence now, not out of curiosity, but something quieter, heavier, like he could feel the irritation that hung in the air between the fields and the vinyl-sided suburb. The first real moment of escalation came. On a Sunday afternoon, Finch, dressed in his usual uniform, ironed polo and a smug expression, rolled slowly past the property line. Eli was out front fixing a loose hinge on the mailbox when the horn blared. Short, loud, intentional. Bruno flinched. Just barely. The kind of muscle twitch only a man who'd raised him would notice. But to Eli, it was like thunder cracking. Over dry grass. He looked up, mouth tight, but Finch had already passed, his side mirror flashing like a wink in the sun. That night, the first scratch marks appeared on the inside of the fence. Nothing wild, just long grooves in the wood post, like hooves testing boundaries. Eli didn't panic. Animals got agitated sometimes, but when he found a brand new HOA notice crammed into his mailbox the next morning, ongoing livestock, safety concerns, final warning, before official complaint, his stomach twisted in that slow, stubborn way only old men from the country understand. Safety concern? Eli muttered, holding the paper like it might bite him. Bull ain't never so much as sneezed on a soul, but HOA language didn't care for common sense, and Finch was nothing if not persistent. He started honking more often, once during a Zoom call with his Bluetooth still connected, another time while a mother and toddler were walking nearby. Always near the fence, always when Bruno was watching. Bruno began pacing. Not often, but enough for Eli to notice the prints left in the dry dirt, wide, deep impressions that spoke of weight and warning. Sally, the dog, grew twitchy too. She'd bark when Finch's SUV appeared down the lane, hackles raised like she could smell the malice through the metal. Meanwhile, the neighborhood buzzed like a wasp's nest poked one too many times. Gossip flared. A couple down the hill claimed Bruno had stared at their daughter with intent. Another neighbor suggested putting up a motion-triggered sprinkler, just in case. Eli heard all of it. Whispering Trails wasn't subtle, and it wasn't exactly built for people who kept bulls as kin. Still, Eli stayed quiet. He patched the fence, moved Bruno's feeding trough a few feet back, and even left a handwritten note at Finch's gate asking him to let the animal be. No answer came. What did come was a second letter, this time from the county livestock board. An anonymous complaint, concerned neighbor, checked every box for negligence. Photos were attached. Zoomed in, blurry shots of Bruno standing still, looking large and nothing else. Eli held the letter like a wound. Bruno stood behind him in the pasture that evening, the sun throwing long shadows through the fence slats, the air still and waiting. "This ain't your fault," Eli muttered. "They just don't understand stillness." The truth was, Bruno was changing. He stood longer at the fence, ears twitching at every honk, muscles just a bit too tense. Eli knew that look. Not anger, not yet, but close. And when the wind shifted that evening, it brought the sound of a distant horn again, sharp, mocking, and just loud enough to stir something that had been still for too long. It was one of those blistering, breathless July afternoons when even the flies seemed too tired to buzz. The kind of day where the sun sat like judgment overhead, and everything moved just a bit slower, except, of course, for Raymond Finch. Finch's white SUV came barreling down the gravel shoulder like it had something to prove. Dust trailed. Behind it, in angry spirals, his window was halfway down, one arm hanging out, fingers tapping furiously on the door like a man itching to pick a fight with the world. Eli watched it all from the shade of the barn, straw hat pulled low, wrench still in hand from fixing a stubborn bolt on the gate. Bruno was grazing near the fence, calm as ever, tail flicking lazily. But there was something in the air. The kind of stillness that presses against your ribs. The kind that animals feel long before a storm. Finch didn't just honk this time. He slowed his truck, nearly to a crawl, and laid on the horn in one long blaring note. Not a warning, not a reaction, a challenge. Then, as if trying to seal the insult, he slapped the outside of his door twice and shouted something indistinct through the open window. Bruno lifted his head. It wasn't fast, or angry, not at first. It was deliberate, like a mountain noticing the wind. His ears rotated forward, the muscles across his shoulders rippled, subtle but unmistakable. Eli dropped the wrench. "Don't," he whispered, barely audible. But it was already too late. Finch revved the engine. Bruno took a step forward. Then, the crack. Wood split. a dry, violent snap that rang out across the pasture. The fence, old but faithful, gave way like a thread pulled too tight for too long. One post teetered, another splintered, and Bruno surged forward in a blur of dark muscle and earth-churning force. Finch's face vanished behind the windshield as panic took hold. He tried to gun it, tires spinning, gravel screaming, but Bruno was faster than any of them thought possible. He didn't charge blindly. No, there was something chillingly intentional in his movement, a kind of righteous fury that only silence can cultivate. He hit the front fender just as Finch's truck veered, sending the whole vehicle jerking sideways. The SUV's tires slid across the loose edge of the road, caught on the slope where gravel met ditch, and the world seemed to tip. Eli was already running. But the crash came first, a dull metallic thunk, followed by the hiss of steam and the slow, gut-wrenching creak of steel against earth. Finch's SUV had slid nose-first into the drainage ditch, tilted just enough to leave the back wheels spinning in the air like a flipped turtle. For a moment there was no sound. Then a cough, a door flung open, and Finch stumbled out, arms flailing, shirt smeared with dust, disbelief stretched across his face like a mask too tight. He looked not so much injured as defeated, wild-eyed and breathless, staring at the bull who now stood just beyond the crumpled fender, head low, snorting once like punctuation. Eli reached the scene moments later, heart hammering in his throat. "Raymond! You all right?" he called, more reflex than concern. Finch turned sharply, pointing a shaking hand at Bruno. "That beast attacked me," he wheezed. "You saw it. It came at me like some rabbit," but his voice cracked under the weight of his own story. Bruno had stopped. He stood perfectly still, dust clinging to his coat, nostrils flaring. Not advancing, not threatening, just watching. Eli took a few careful steps forward and put himself between the two. "Fence broke. That's all I saw." "The hell it did," Finch spat, face redder by the second. "You saw what he did. He rammed me." Eli's eyes narrowed, quiet settling into his posture like armor. "And what were you doing out here honking like a damn circus? What were you trying to prove?" Finch didn't answer. Couldn't. The engine was still ticking. A slow leak began dribbling down into the ditch water. Somewhere down the road a screen door slammed. Neighbors would be coming soon, drawn by noise, dust, and the scent of spectacle. Bruno huffed once, then turned and walked slowly back toward the broken fence. His gait was calm, regal, untouched by panic. The king had returned to his pasture. Eli exhaled long and low and muttered, "You poke a bear long enough, you don't get to act surprised when it stands up." Finch sat on the edge of the ditch, shirt damp with sweat and pride leaking faster than his radiator. And all around, the air held that strange silence again, not the peaceful kind this time. No, this one was loaded. With aftermath. By the next morning, the ditch was still damp, the fence still broken, and the town still humming with the kind of gossip that sticks to skin like humidity. Eli sat on his porch, coffee cold, watching as a county sheriff's cruiser eased up the gravel lane. He didn't need to ask why they were there. Raymond Finch had filed a formal complaint. The charge? Negligent containment of a dangerous animal. Bruno stood a few yards away, as calm as ever, chewing thoughtfully in the shade. If he had any opinion on the legal proceedings unfolding around him, he didn't show it. Eli watched the officer approach, a polite young man from 2 towns over who looked half apologetic just for being there. "I don't suppose you have footage?" the deputy asked, notebook in hand. "Not unless you count the bull's memory," Eli replied. Voice dry. "And he ain't talking." But others were. By midday, the story had jumped the fence lines. A blurry photo of Bruno in mid-stride, taken by someone in Whispering Trails who'd caught the tail end of the chaos, made its way onto local news. The headline was pure bait. "Bull goes berserk, HOA president hospitalized." Though Finch had walked away with nothing more than bruised pride and a dinged bumper, he'd apparently stopped by the ER just to be safe. Eli said nothing publicly. He'd lived long enough to know the wind changed direction more than folks admitted. But then came the unexpected break. A retired electrician named Gus, who lived on the other side of the creek, knocked on Eli's door with a USB stick and a grin that said he'd been waiting for years to stick it to Finch. "I got one of them outdoor cams for critters," Gus explained. "Caught the whole damn thing. Your bull didn't charge," he responded. Man was laying on the horn like he was calling the gates of hell. Eli stared at the footage later that night. And sure enough, there it was. Finch, slowing down, blaring the horn, waving his arms like a man trying to start a riot. Bruno standing still until the fence gave, and there was more. A kid from the neighborhood, maybe 10 or 11, had been fishing by the creek that afternoon. His father came forward, saying his boy saw the whole thing and swore, "The man in the white car was yelling at the bull first." Bit by bit, the narrative cracked. News outlets ran a follow-up. New footage suggests HOA president provoked incident. The sheriff's office quietly dropped the complaint. No charges were filed. Still, the neighborhood split down the middle. Some praised Eli and Bruno, quiet dignity under fire. Others murmured about the bull being unstable, more a symbol of rural resistance than safety. Eli didn't mind either way. He rebuilt the fence himself, plank by plank, under a softer sun. Bruno stayed nearby, never again approaching the edge quite so close. "I reckon the world's just got too many people honking when they ought to be listening," Eli told Sally one night, as crickets stirred and fireflies blinked like old porch lights. And Bruno? He watched the road, but never bowed. By August, the air had softened, the fields breathed again, green and humming, and the cicadas had quieted to a tolerable murmur. The road outside Eli's place, still dusty, still lined with old wood fencing, held no more honking, only the gentle hum of tires passing, respectful now, almost reverent. Raymond Finch resigned from the HOA with a one-sentence email. No explanation. No grand exit, just a quiet retreat into the background, like a man who finally realized he'd been fighting a storm with an umbrella made of ego. Word spread fast, of course. Whispering Trails had always had a talent for chewing up its own drama before breakfast, but this time folks weren't laughing. They were watching, and not the way they had before. Bruno had become something else, entirely. Not just a bull anymore, but a kind of legend. Pictures of him, standing tall near the mended fence, broad shoulders catching the golden light, made their rounds on the local farm page, then on regional ag forums. Someone even made a meme. "You mess with the bull, you get the ditch." Eli wasn't sure what a meme technically was, but it made his niece laugh hard enough to spill sweet tea. People started showing up. A little girl from 3 towns over came with her granddad just to see the bull who didn't back down. A teenage boy left a note in the mailbox. "Thanks for standing your ground. The world needs more Brunos." Eli never charged a dime. Never once sold a mug, a sticker, a t-shirt, though offers came. It wasn't about that. He just let them look, from a distance. With respect. Bruno didn't seem to mind the attention. He'd glance up, chew his cud, and return to the quiet art of being still, like he knew that his real power wasn't in muscle or size, but in the simple refusal to be provoked. One morning, as dew clung to the porch rails and the sky bled pink over the pastures, Eli leaned against the fence and watched Bruno grazing peacefully in the low light. Sally lay at his feet, tail thumping. Quietly. "Funny thing," he said, to no one in particular, voice low like a prayer, "how the loudest folks are often the ones who understand the least." He took off his hat, let the breeze run through his thinning hair, and closed his eyes. He'd fought no war. He'd chased no glory. All he'd done was stand by what he knew was true, that the land speaks in stillness, that nature isn't meant to be tamed by noise, and that respect, once lost, demands a reckoning. Bruno lifted his head, eyes catching the light, and for a moment, man and bull simply stood there, breathing in the peace they'd earned. Eli smiled. The fence held, the world turned, and the road stayed quiet. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the next part, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated. See you in the next one. Your support means the world.